Boy, does the mainstream media suck in this town. Let's have a roundup of some of the highs and lows, mostly lows, of the media coverage of politics. And we will start with a reminder of what happened on the White House press briefing the other day, as one reporter was sick and tired of Hollywood stars coming in and taking up time when he still hasn't had a question asked in months. Remember when this happened?
Karim, what I'm saying is you can't keep discriminating against some people in the briefing room because you don't like them, you don't like them.
So you have a choice.
No,
You have a choice. You have a choice.
A number of people in the briefing room, and I'm saying that
Now,
that's
this
not
went on
right.
for several minutes, and that was Simon Atiba. He represents a television network in Africa. And the reporters all turned on him. That's right. Unlike when Jim Acosta actually ripped a microphone out of the hand of a White House intern in the comms department, and the press association actually defended Jim Acosta against Donald Trump. Here, this is what happened in this little case.
Great. It's first a quick moment of personal privilege here. I just want to express our apologies to the press corps, to the folks watching at home for the display we saw earlier. Our responsibility is to
They apologize because their fellow reporter actually made a case out of the fact that he never gets called on. Let's bring in managing editor of Newsbusters over at Media Research Center, Curtis Houck, just when you think you've seen it all, Curtis.
Yeah, I mean, let's work backwards here. Is Zeke Miller here? He's saying this, number one, behind an N95 mask. He's still masked in all his glory. So that's kind of the first problem with him. Number two, he's the same guy who said President Trump removed all these busts of famous people from his Oval Office, and somehow this was an affront to democracy or something really
That's
stupid
right,
like that.
including Martin Luther King's bust, and it was a
Yeah,
lie. That was on the first day of the Trump presidency. How does this guy still have a job?
Yeah, and it's AP, the first draft of history outlet. So that's kind of a problem as well. And it just showed the level of narcissism from the liberal media, because he went on that tangent about how this isn't about us, that we're here to represent the American people and hold their government accountable because they can't be here. Ha ha
Yeah.
ha. I mean, the level of arrogance and narcissism and thin-skinnedness from these people. Again, Zeke is not going to be one of those bombastic people. He's going to be one of those more reserved narcissists. And then going back to Karine Jean-Pierre and Simon Itiba, yes, Simon is gaining a lot of Twitter clout. Yes, he sends very, very long tweets, which is something he probably should cut down on. He goes on conservative media. However, the point is, Karine Jean-Pierre has no room to talk about all of this. She can't string together basic sentences. She really seems to have a struggling grasp with the English language. She should ask her longtime partner and CNN correspondent Suzanne Malveaux for some help on that. It's absolutely stunning, the level of incomprehension she's shown on a daily basis. And really, it's only until recently that she started taking questions from reporters like James Rosen. Yes, she takes questions from Peter Doocy, but it took some squabbling, as I reported a few years ago, or I believe last year, when folks like Al Jazeera and the New York Post weren't being called on, and it led to a blow up afterward with the Correspondents Association. So there's a lot of issues in the press briefing room, but none of this would have happened under Jim Acosta or April Ryan or Brian Kemp.
That's the bigger, frankly, Curtis. It's all about the double standard. It's all about what the calls for decorum in the press room after what we witnessed for 4 years under President Trump. Sean Spicer and Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Kayleigh McEnany, I think, are rolling in the aisle laughing at these calls for decorum because one reporter dares to talk back for a couple of minutes.
Right, exactly. So in that dispute with Simon Ateba, Brian Karam literally said, "It isn't just about you, pal," which, I mean, is just the most ironic thing I've heard this entire year so far.
Yeah.
He lost his mind at Sarah Huckabee Sanders. This administration is about lies, and he talked about kids in cages, and sure enough, he was rewarded with a CNN contract, and he continued to write for the esteemed Playboy magazine for a while, and some local newspapers in Montgomery County that I don't think exist anymore. April Ryan lost her mind at Sean Spicer about America being a racist country. She was rewarded with a CNN contract and a book, and moved from American Urban Radio Networks to the Griot. And of course, Jim Acosta with his self-aggrandizing book tour and stares into the mirror in the Stephen Colbert dressing room.
While you're talking about losing your mind, though, this amazing clip happened on Joy Reid the other day, and let's just set this up real fast. The media in this town and a lot of politicians, they set up this framework where if you're not 100%, 1,000% all in on everything with regard to Biden's policy in Ukraine, if you dare to question or challenge, say, hey, maybe we should have some accountability for $100 billion spent over there, and what's our end game here, and what's our exit strategy? Suddenly, you're on Vladimir Putin's side. So they created that atmosphere, and they've scared everybody that you can't criticize the policy. And then look what Joy Reid does on MSNBC.
This kind of obscene death and destruction will haunt the world forever. From a strategic vantage point, Putin miscalculated just how difficult it would be to invade and occupy a country that doesn't want him there. He must have told himself his brutal forces would be greeted as liberators. It's not the first time such a miscalculation has caused devastation. 20 years ago today, the United States invaded Iraq under false pretenses, forever changing the global order. So much so that Putin actually mentioned Iraq in his speech that he delivered last year.
Right, there it is. Now that you all hate Putin for what he did, let's remind you that this is exactly what Bush did. Seriously?
Putin, Putin and America, George W. Bush, Putin are basically the same thing. I mean, it's so par for the course for Joy Reid. Again, Larry, this is the side that talks about civility and words matter and hate has no home here. And, I remember when George W. Bush, famously said, you're either with us or against us. The media lost their minds at this. And now Joy Reid is doing something just like this, and nobody really cares. Yeah. I bet you if you ask some of these people at these networks, CNN or even some of her colleagues at MSNBC, they would say, yeah, she's totally crazy. Jalalabad Joy, as I called her, because she thought the withdrawal from Afghanistan went swimmingly. So I would say that, people are too cowardly at these networks to speak out against her. You notice that Brian Stelter, when he was at CNN, and Oliver Darcy, who's still there, never really talked about the insane things that Joy Reid have said, because they're too busy talking about conservative media needing to be deplatformed and removed, right, and, conservative employees sent to the unemployment rolls.
Yeah, but I got handed for this. Joy Reid made that case, and it said, "Oh, it's the 20-year anniversary." Let me read up on that. I want to remember. I remember this whole thing shaking down. And Curtis, I think you'll be surprised to learn. I'm sure Joy Reid would be surprised to learn that apparently George Bush was not a dictator. He actually went to Congress to get support for his military action in Iraq. He got that vote. He got that support. Guess who voted for it? Then Senator Joe Biden. Curtis, that didn't make it into Joy Reid's report.
Yeah, of course it didn't, because she's too busy, trying to peddle a narrative that conservatives are somehow subhuman human beings. Facts can't really get in the way of, the crazy nonsense that she peddles on a daily basis. She's constantly trying to one-up her colleague, Nicole Wallace, who's too busy running Rich White Liberal Wine Mom Story Hour. They're jockeying for the most watched show on MSNBC for who can say the more ridiculous thing. We're just like one step away from either one of them saying conservatives should be rounded up.
Yeah, that's the most watched show on MSNBC is almost the booby prize that the most watched show on CNN would be, but we'll leave it there. By the way, fascinatingly, Curtis, the most outspoken, prominent public politician right now speaking out against the Iraq war invasion by George W. Bush is Donald Trump. So there's your strange bedfellows for you, Joy Reid. You and Trump are together. Thanks for joining us, Curtis. Always good. We'll be back in a moment. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight.